Ladies and gentlemen, every once in a while you record a podcast and you go, oh, I shouldn't put this out, right? And by that I mean someone else goes, oh, you shouldn't put this out, right? And the important thing is that you don't listen to them. What?
We had one that you didn't put out.
Well,
and that was your choice.
There's been some things where it was like I'm usually very drunk on these. Yes. I was going to say pretty drunk, but honestly very drunk. When I seem particularly lucid and sober, it's the rare occasion when I'm only pretty drunk. And the norm, the center, the median income is very drunk. But there's some where I've been like extremely drunk to the point where it's like, it's honestly, as incoherent as these are, there can be a bit of a thread. And as I've said a lot with any of the online content that I've ever created, my preface is usually, if you can stand me at all, this is honestly pretty good. Now there's a big if, but if you can, like if you're like, oh, I can take this guy's foot, it's like I've had people who are even on my side, like people even like, I don't really try to do the big TikTok thing anymore like I did during the pandemic, where I just got like tens of thousands of followers and things like as like a weird hobby without being hot or relevant or anything or consistent with what I was talking about. But even to this day, every once in a while I post like one of my comedy clips or something, and there'll be like a guy making a comment just going like, I know dude's pretty annoying and off the rails, but god damn, he's got a point with this or whatever. And I'm like, that's what the people who are on my team, that guy like follows me. It's like they have to make a preface where they're like, I know this is awful, but man, you can't argue with the fact that you have to share this because this guy's actually right about what he was talking about. So that really led to the like, if you can stand me at all. Mm-hmm. So what that means is when you don't share something, it's because it's like unfollow it, you just can't, it's boring. You're like, this is just babble that goes nowhere in a very real way. Worse than usual. Worse than right now, which is bad enough. But last week, I talked about the cheap fucking weird symbol for American capitalism that went into the ocean. And it had kind of gone missing, but everybody had this false sense of hope. Like back the middle of last week, they're like, well, maybe all of these terrible, boring, wretched billionaire people will be okay, which is what we all want. And they were like, it's hard to say what's going on down there, but they definitely have enough oxygen left, and we do not have any kind of proof that there's shoddy, cut-corner hubris when bringing a weird-ass homemade submarine down to depths that only robots have been sent to before, many of which have not made it back, to a ship that sank in one of the deepest trenches of the ocean due to the exact same capitalistic hubris that being repeated. It's like, yes, opening the Ark of the Covenant causes all the Nazis' faces to melt off. But even when it's closed and you have it inside the box, the insignia on the sides is gonna like burn off because it's radiating just the power of God. And the Titanic, I feel, is one of those things where it's like, if there's haunted things on this planet, if there was like the first time there's ever going to be a failed private wealthy person trip to the moon, and there's going to be one. And by there's going to be one, I don't mean wealthy person trip to the moon. I mean failed wealthy person trip to the moon. There's going to be one.
God, I hope so.
Might even be like the third one. They might do it, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then they'll be like, this worked. Now, how can we do it cheaper and charge more? And then they're going to crash on the moon. And if there had been an actual, Earth, government mission, but I guess whatever you call it, like NASA's not in the private sector.
No.
And we took the Werner von Braun and a bunch of some of the worst Nazi rocket scientists and put them to work on sending us to the moon and all that stuff. But let's say this. Let's say that, like, America landed on the moon with the help of a bunch of Nazi war criminals and Walt Disney and whoever, and then it crashed, and it had a bunch of, so it had, like, this weird, it's like, not, maybe they didn't die in the crash, but they landed, and then they couldn't get back, so they just slowly went crazy and died on the moon or whatever, and then a bunch of, like, rich...
Armageddon.
Yeah, a bunch of rich people and subsequently went to go look at it, and then they died. That would be about as haunted as, in the black vacuum of radioactive, atmosphereless moon space. Mm-hmm. On the moon, which is the fist of the universe's magical focus for a lot of things. It's it's the moon. Like, the phases of the moon are it affects our oceans. It's part of us. It's this very witchy Abbey of Thelema in space. And then, like, we went there with a bunch of Nazis and died. And then it's like, okay, so the ghosts on that thing are going to be horrific. The Titanic was such a, like, everyone was like, don't do this. Like, it was like, well, mankind can make such a thing or whatever. And there was like poor people down in the bottom that they like didn't rescue. And like, so it's like this just hideously haunted thing at the bottom of the ocean. Space, terrifying, full of hellish interdimensional ghosts. Bottom of the ocean, terrifying, full of hellish interdimensional ghosts.
Right.
And you go down there and you monkey around with it, you're just gonna die. And it's because of this. Can you show the screen something? Look at how haunted. What I'm saying
is haunting.
It's an incantation. It's a rotten. Oh shit!
I got it.
Oh, you got it. I just realized Dear Asshole's back behind the drum kit because I threw it at the drums.
Well, when I get up for more wine,
okay, all right,
I will get Dear Asshole. Never fear.
How's the wine? But yeah, so, you're just trifling with things that you shouldn't be. So I don't feel the least bit bad. My guest co-host of last week kind of recommended before he left. He's like, maybe since we brought that up, we should edit that out, or maybe not post it.
Wait, edit what out?
Just anything about the submarine.
Okay, here's an interesting point I want to bring up.
But they died because that's what the universe wanted. So it's in service. I'm prostrating myself before the angry fist of God by putting that out there and taking people on this ride.
Here's the thing, though. Like, there were some people that were upset and genuinely worried about these people, but the majority of us didn't care, thought it was funny. So, like, what do you think the fucking reason is that the majority of us have no empathy for these people?
Oh, they're parasitically wealthy.
Yes.
And I've
seen a few good takes on this, but it's just an interesting subject to bring up. That, like, usually, I mean, I remember growing up, tragic things happen, and we really didn't care about how much money they had, but we'd all care. But
you do realize you did hear that there's like a thing full of refugees that sank earlier that week. That was another part of it.
They didn't even try to the coast. They didn't even send a.
But let's just say there are some people out there that I might even perhaps still be associated with that have made good for themselves by becoming landlords and looking up to people who buy and then pretend they invented an electric car company or whatever, who will remain nameless, who once tried to buy this podcast, and go like, hey, like, it's kind of aspirational. No, I don't come with it. That's the thing I explained to, let's call him E. Musk. No, that's too obvious. Elon M. Mm-hmm. And he tried to buy this podcast.
Elon E.
Yeah. and I was like, well, yeah, but like the part of this podcast is you do it yourself. Like, it's the Reverend John Wheeler podcast. But if you buy it, like, you have to still call it that, but then you have to do it. And you have to get really drunk. And you have to just go on the air and kind of just, do your best. You're buying, it's intellectual property. I'm not working for you or whatever. And then at the end, he was like, well, maybe it's worth it. And I'm like, you know what? I think I've had time to think about this. And the deal's off the table. But, I do have principles. And so there were people who occasionally will try to unabashedly remind me that I strive for success and everything like that, and that maybe I shouldn't be so in league with little anarcho-communists on the internet or whatever, even though it's really fun. And I should have a little bit of fucking empathy for the crooked beige line that, buys up all the affordable housing and sells it back to us at 10 times the value because that's a service they're providing, and it's like, I have no problem running my mouth about that, even when people are sitting right next to me, but sometimes they push back a little bit and go like, well, do we really need to be this mean to the billionaires on this just because they were, you can't get that rich without ruining the lives of incalculable amounts of people. But nevertheless, they followed their dream and they won, so we should be nice to them or whatever the point is. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to put it out anyway, though. And then I'm going to make another one where I'm 100 times more mean about it. and throw anyone that was trying to give me sort of like some friendly perspective or whatever just directly under the sub. Not the bus.
The only horrifying thing about that accident that, like, is just the way they died. You know, the fact that they did die...
Painlessly?
Well, painlessly, but that just, like...
And instantly? The death we would all hope for ourselves, you know? Like,
that's not what I'm getting. It's just the point
no
of,
one
like,
wants to
knowing
sit there
you're...
with cancer
like,
for a decade.
Knowing that you're gonna die any second, stuck in this, like, little... Well, that's debatable.
Because it got in the thing not thinking that they were going to die at any second. I think it went tits up, like, in, like...
I'm pretty sure that they they picked up some sonar of a SOS signal or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
but, like, it did. I think it imploded though, and you would just.
It did implode.
Go.
But yes, but the fear that you had that was still there, like we're not gonna be able to get back up. Like that's the thing I feel for. But
your fear, that fear should have been going on consistently and with no spikes. Before you got in it.
Absolutely.
The whole time you got in it.
The funny thing about
it
all
was being
of this,
run with like an NES controller. Like, no, it actually wasn't. Yeah. You know what? Here's something I'll say. If they were using a real Nintendo controller, they'd probably be alive right now. Because you could take like a Game Boy and like throw it into like an atomic reactor and fish it out in 70 years and be like, it still plays Tetris. There's some new levels now. That's interesting, but okay. Like, yeah, it was like just such a wretchedly, like the guy who ran it was making fun of people who whine. Ugh, that's why you're not rich. Your parents didn't have an emerald mine. Whine about like being afraid. Well, why ever even get out of bed if you're going to be so scared? And it's like, okay, well, why don't you just like...
He avoided all safety regulations. They went into like
all
international
those
waters.
like lobby things to make sure there's no safety regulations in there because safety's for pussies and it's more like regulations are for now I only have $500 million and not $3 billion.
My point was everything surrounding it, fuck them, whatever, but like... The point where I actually...
Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell!
Like...
I hope they're trapped in the fucking weird, shining, fucking Titanic thing
the thing
forever.
I feel bad about that I can't control. I mean, it's just that fear factor of... I don't know. But that's just like... I
feel that way every time I get on Spirit Airlines. You get over it.
I've never rode Spirit.
Oh, it's the worst airplane.
I believe it.
It's the closest you can get to this submarine that you could possibly like. If you could just go like, hey, what if we took Walmart and shoved it into a tube and lit the back on fire and launched it into the sky and just hoped it landed where we wanted? That's basically Spirit's business model.
Yeah, I know.
And I've flown on it a few times. With
I've
yellow Walmart tube.
Boarded next to got my boarding pass next to them before. That's about as close as I've gotten.
Well, I understand that you come from a place of old wealth and everything.
Yeah,
so you've never had to get on, a Spirit Airline like the rest of us.
No, just their like sister Sun Country.
God, Sun Country used to be better too. That's
Sun Country
so sad.
was great.
I
almost got a job with them. I tried to apply as a
flight attendant.
I've thought about that many a times, like throughout my life, and no.
Why not?
Well,
we don't know how many years we have left. It's time to get real weird with it.
They don't allow visible tattoos.
Right now in 2023?
Yeah.
Okay, you checked?
They're still... Oh, I checked just right now. In my brain, I checked.
Okay. When's the last time you looked on, like, maybe the internet or something like that?
I don't know. I knew someone... You remember Lisa? She was a flight attendant. She had a little tiny, tiny heart on, like, where my fading star is. Yeah. And she had to cover that up. Like, they're really, really... Airlines suck. But, I mean, they're probably desperate now that...
Yeah, Jesus, there's... if you want to play the tattoo game now, you might as well just file for bankruptcy. Yeah, maybe.
And I'm not getting rid of orange hair to...
Okay. To be a sky mall. Well, okay. What about a submarine pilot?
Fuck that.
Do you know that there's, at least there used to be, there was a point in history, and I can't say what still is and what isn't, or whatever, but there used to be a job where you take like a one-person submersible into the sewage rendering things. It was called a fecal pilot. And you would drive a submarine around the ocean of poop in there. And like,
sounds great. Do you know what
probably,
the salary was?
I'll bet it's probably pretty good, honestly. It's
is it
technical.
a government gig?
It might be. It's probably a government contract. The company that you would probably be driving the submarine for. So at the very least, it's like sort of an alien situation where it's like, well, it's kind of government's involved, but it is a private company, but it's a direct contract that they've had for decades. So, you know, there's
so
probably
like
some good...
Lockheed Martin.
You could drive a poop submarine for Lockheed Martin.
Okay.
Yeah. And that probably pays pretty good.
I bet it would.
Anyway, I don't know. You'd
Full benefits, 401k. I don't know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. I mean, not
just the life I've been waiting for.
If you're telling me that driving like a futuristic submarine around in an underwater ocean of poop, taking data and stuff, is for like 8 times as much money as you make now, is somehow less interesting than the way you make that money now, I don't know. Like, if you actually, it's something that I had to take
if it was the sewers of Futurama, sure. You
don't know that it's not. I'm sure there's NDAs. I'm sure that the fucking fecal pilots of our forebears, have seen Morlocks and various goblins. Whatever lives in the fucking end point of the sewer, that's where all the good stuff goes. There's probably rings and coins in there. They probably look the other way. You wash them off. Like this, everything gets washed out of the
quick scheme.
Yeah, or at least if you're a hoarder of arcana, you could probably find a lot of that. Mystical items in the sewer, human skulls. You probably find dead pieces of dead people all over the place. Like as a death doula, I think that might, just kind of be in the pocket a little bit. Where it's just like.
Yes, I definitely want to take a human skull to the next dying person I'm with.
No, I just mean seeing it bump into the windshield might be kind of fun. Like, instead of a deer, there would just be, like, bones and, like, guns and the people...
Wait. Do I have to purchase my own poop submarine?
I don't think it's like being a garbage man, no. I don't think it is like that. I think that it's like you just go, hello... I would like, and I don't think there's school for that. I think it's like literally, it's on the job training. It's their poop submarine.
Well, sure, I'm sure it's like a CDO.
Yeah, like you're just kind of like, whatever. You just here's how backward, forward, up. It goes side to side, back and forth, or side to side, up and down, but not back in time, or whatever. Like that. Yeah. So, look. The barrier for entry for being a fecal pilot is probably only the last thing I ever want to do is be a fecal pilot, which means that it's a very in-demand job. Fun jobs like flight attendant, they're probably desperate for those. How many people want to drive a poop submarine?
Well, now you've made it sound so interesting, I kind of... You know what? I wouldn't mind.
I just want to be able to say my friend Meredith is a fecal pilot. Like, what does that mean?
Me too!
She drives around...
I would love to add that to my resume of crap.
It'd be easily the brown jewel. Let's say crown jewel. The brown jewel of your resume.
Yeah.
Look, there's things that I thought about doing when I was like a little less confident in the fact that on the entry level I'm a pretty good audio, video design, blah 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 guy that can get into places, but then once I'm in, I'm not a bad like corporate warlord, it turns out. But there was things where I was like, oh, that they pay like a crazy amount of money for people to just climb up those giant radio tower antennas because it's terrifying. Mm-hmm. But like one person in like the last 80 years has ever died doing that job. It seems terrifying, but it's not. But yet nobody wants to do it. And it's like, oh yeah, you make X amount a year and you're not going to work every day. You do a little bit of travel, but they're like, yeah, you go up one of them a week, and it's like you have like a really real all the time job or whatever. But it is. You will get attacked by, like, condors and things like that, or whatever. Not condors. There's some kind of high-level bird that do attack those guys. But then they make those, Taurus makes that the Judge, that revolver that holds both 45s but has long chambers, so you can put 410 shotgun shells with birdshot in there. Oh, my God. Oh, I'm going to buy one of those after. That's going to be my treat for when I go renew my concealing carry. Well, every time I buy a thing, every time I, You have to go through the class again as if you'd never done it before. It's weird. You don't just file paper. You got to sit through the whole goddamn thing. And so,
oh, what a nightmare!
Well, once every 5 years. But yeah, they do make Taurus a lower level but yet solid brand that I trust that makes a revolver. Some of them have like a snub nose to it, but it's like the thing is like this long because you can put like... But they also make ones with like... It's basically like the thing that Joker has in the 89 Batman where you can put like it's a small shotgun shell, but it's still just like buckshot. Like, you barely have to aim. And so if there's birds attacking you on a giant tower, that's the thing to have around. So it's like, okay, that takes care of the birds. And then the fear of heights, just don't look down or whatever. And it was like a shitload of money. So I was like, well, maybe I'll do this or whatever. And then, I fell into what I should be actually doing because the antenna job is a bit of a waste. There's people out there who are probably making too little money, and they're like, "Yeah, but I don't have any like marketable skills." I'm like, "Well, you got a brass set on you because you won't get hurt, but you can climb these giant ass towers, and they will pay you an obscene amount. They'll pay you like a corporate CEO level of money for a blue collar job just because it's horrifying. But it's like if you can manage it." That's like family and lake house money, and like, I don't even work fucking 5 days a week.
Is it yacht money?
No, because nothing of value makes you yacht money. Only like rearranging the way in which you take money from the services provided by the people that climb the antennas and like reinvest it into things and move it around and facilitate like real estate deals where like a Saudi prince wants to stash some money here, so you're like, well, I'll rent it back to you as a lease and whatever, and just all that shit that's like, who does that do anything for? Does that make the cell service better? Is that a better mousetrap? Is that unclogging the sewers in a submarine? Is that doing anything that helps anybody? No, but it pays the most money ever. You're just like, all I'm doing is rearranging crap on paper that is just good. Probably we could exist completely without that. It gives you more money than anything, and you use it to go in a submarine, and then when you die, everybody pretends to be sad. Like, it's just insanity.
Except nobody really pretended to be sad, and everybody made fun of it immediately.
As they should. Well, when I made an Instagram post about it, I put, you can use clips of music like "We all live in a yellow submarine." Like, it's fun. Yeah, no.
I liked that. I don't know if they made it on TikTok or whatever, or if it was an Instagram reel with that I sent you. It was Joe Exotic.
Oh yeah.
Where there's like, I don't know what he said, but it was.
Yeah, what was he talking about?
Because he was like, because when they like said their little like, their help me SOS. So he was like, not a fuck you, not a can I help you, whatever.
Oh, yeah. I was just watching, God, my favorite Joe Exotic thing, because Chris had never watched, no. Chris had never watched Always Sunny, but he had definitely watched Tiger King. No. And that was a thing. I was making Peter actually showed me my first episode of Always Sunny when I didn't realize that it was something I would like.
Okay.
And it was something from season 3 that he'd saved on his computer when I was visiting him when I was like 29 or 30.
Sure.
And I was like, oh my God, this is really funny. And so I was like, oh, I can't. It's like, I want to make sure that Chris never stops watching it. You can't just start at the first one. Like, don't do that. Just make, because...
You could start anywhere.
Well, but here's the thing. Some of the ones I gravitate towards are interesting curveballs, and that's not a good first episode. We talked about this last time. I have mine that I think I decided on. I'm gonna, maybe this will be a part of the show like Dear Asshole, where everybody, anyone else that ever comes on, what would be yours? But so I'm like... Oh, I love the Gang Beats Boggs, but it's on an airplane. They're not even in the bar or whatever. I love the thing where Charlie the camera follows him around the whole time and he has to, pass the inspection with the bar. But it's kind of like, you have to know that Charlie's the weird guy that shouldn't be that smart for part of that to be funny. And like, you move that goddamn dumpster, you bitch. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. But you kind of got to know the show. Or Being Frank, it's like, you kind of have to know the show to appreciate it. Those are all my favorite ones. But I kind of went back. Peter's was good too. Now I don't remember what it was. It was a really good one. It was solid and it made sense. Mine. Oh no, actually, if you have one, go first.
Okay, mine is the gang dances their asses off.
That is a good one, and I've been going back and rewatching stuff, and I just watched that one, and yeah, the cricket has like the fake legs and everything like that. Mine, and I'll give you all the reasons why. is the gang.
Will.
I think the best first one, and it's tailor-made for Chris. It's not necessarily for anybody. I think it's pretty universal, like it would work on a lot of people, but specifically for him, the gang wrestles for the troops.
Oh yeah.
Because it's in the bar. It's a scheme. They're dressed as like the Eagle Men. They look like chickens with like drawn on abs. Like the Roddy Piper's in it as like the maniac. He's like, you have kids? He's like, not anymore. And it's really sad, and fucked up, and like he lives in his car. And then Frank's the trash man. So he's like, I'm gonna dress. I eat garbage and like I throw it everywhere. And he starts throwing up. And there's like, oh, okay. And then the whole thing, they're like, oh, it's gonna be for like the troops that come back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and they dress Cricket, the homeless guy who's homeless because they ruined his fucking life, as like a fucking terrorist, like racist ass everything. And he's like running around, like, he's like throwing sand in everyone's face. He's winning. All the veterans are like, boo! They're just like super angry. And then like at the you've all seen this before or whatever. The very end, like this like garbage can comes. It hits him, but it doesn't like bunk him in the head. It like chops a giant hole out of his fucking throat.
Yeah,
he's like bleeding out. He's like, oh, Cricket, did I get you? And he's bleeding, and everyone's blind and everything. And he's just like standing there in his like Tarzan, like what is he like? Everyone just starts screaming and cheering, and it ends. And I'm like, God, that would get Chris to have to be like, I have to keep watching this now. I'm not going to get lazy about it. Like, I'm 100% in. I get it, and then all the weirder ones would make sense. All the ones that are slightly like.
Since we're talking about Chris, I mean, I don't want to make it official, but I think he should be a correspondent on the podcast.
No, I agree, and him and I had talked about how he's he potentially be very good as like a special agent, like a
correspondent is the best, like the best description, I think.
Because whenever there's certain things, it's like you and me can talk about anything, including the things I talked to him about, but it's a special situation where it's like, oh, it's time, like we put on our foil hats just to talk about aliens the whole time. Like him and I can tackle some of those old school high ass Joe Rogan topics a little bit.
Of the SNL like weekly news.
Yeah,
and they have the correspondents in there. Like that's who he reminds me of. Like
and or the Daily Show or whatever. They also have kind of like correspondents and things. But yeah, special people that come in for like certain stuff or whatever.
Yeah, it's just that he come in for the whole episode.
Yeah, and like he was talking about something too. There's like another one where I was like, people are kind of like once a month rather than once a week. It was just like, we find a special reason to talk about like. Some slightly
so
more
much special things
weed-soaked conspiratorial thing that is like a thing that I love about Chris is that he's very, very like handsomely adjacent to that stuff, but doesn't really, he's not an annoying like Alex Jones guy or anything. He's just, just he likes it for the same reason I do, because it's just some men want to watch the world burn, and some men want to like. Just laugh at the world as it shits its pants. And like him and I have that special kind of thing in common. As we learned on the Blue Felix bus over many boring hours and weeks and months. And have been very good friends ever since.
Cool.
But yeah, that is like almost like a real coherent plan going forward that I rather than it being like entirely shot from the hip, where it's like slightly structured, which is a stretch for us here in this basement that has been home to many, many things that you and I have done, regarding this YouTube channel mainly. But yeah, no, I'm way into that. Speaking of which, I earlier today at work, because and again for those who randomly tune in and then somehow make it 30 minutes into this for no reason.
You're going to tell a story? I'm going to get some wine.
Yeah. Go, Mary, I know if you would grab Dear Asshole for me on your way back.
Asshole.
It's by the, I threw it into the drum so it would make a funny drum, sound.
Oh, you prick. It's totally in the corner.
Well, just move the fucking hi-hat. Like,
that's so much work.
It really isn't, though. Yeah, see, eventually my wife is going to be our Max Weinberg. Wax Feinberg. Because I want to, using OBS just to have like a static camera shot is such a lazy, someday I would like to have a little bit of a switcher thing and point a camera over in the other part of the basement by the bar where there's a whole ass drum set up. And Alexis is learning to play the drums. And it'd be very good to have a band that has no musical, no melody in it, all percussion, played by someone who's learning. I think that would be a perfect, like, here's our guest, and she's just like, blah, 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 because I like the Eric Andre show.
Animal.
And yeah, like Animal. And it would be in the pocket of sort of that Eric Andre level of nonsense. Hang on, I got a dog ear, dear asshole, so I don't accidentally read an old page again. There we go. But we'll find out what it's about later. So, anyway, I was talking to our correspondent, Chris, who is a professional glassblower at where I work. And it's real fun because where I work it's like multiple businesses in a trench coat, and it also has multiple buildings. And I'm a media creative director guy there for all of our various, like, advertising, images, social media stuff, just whatever. The job that everyone knows that I should have had for a place that sells drug paraphernalia and real drugs here and again, and will be a chain of dispensaries when that happens. That'll be fun. But it's funny because I'm, like, in this, like, office with computers, but then out my window I can, like, look down and see all the glassblower guys, and it looks like it's Saruman, like orcs, just flames, just hammers and shit, and, like, it's really fun. But every once in a while, those guys go outside to smoke weed, and I go and take a secondhand weed break because I can't. I'm like a before bed one-y guy, not a weed guy. But so I was talking to Chris about AI stuff, and that's like a big thing, and it's a thing that we were like, I don't know, like not really gonna.
Oh God, are you going into this?
Yeah, because we're like halfway through. It's gonna be 20 minutes before Dear Asshole. It's fine.
You completely forgot what this episode's about. I tried my best to sneak it in there.
Well, don't sneak it in there.
You didn't pick up on it.
Look at my cool doom googly eyes.
Buddy.
Well, right, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about the orcas sinking yachts. That's what has to happen. That's nature fixing itself.
The sea is angry.
The sea has always been angry. The sea is
extra angry.
I have pointed out to some people who don't, we have a friend that actually, like, recently, and not as like a weird childhood story in the 80s, but like lost a couple of fingers in a Minnesota winter as like an adult, and only not from being lost in the middle of nowhere, just being like, oh, where are my keys? I was outside. It was so fucking cold that it only took like a little bit of like, oh shit, I gotta call my roommate, whatever, that amount of time, like fully like. And it was like the winter here is like the ocean, and people don't understand that it's like you have to have a healthy respect for how fucking dangerous it is. Like, you can have a boat on a lake here in Minnesota. It can be kind of small, and the engine doesn't have to be that big. If you're like a coastal person who's like, oh, let's go out into the ocean, it's like it has to be like 3 times as big. Like, you can't. There's like a minimum requirement for how sturdy a thing is if you're going to go in the real ass ocean with it, because it's terrifying compared to, a lake is a little terrifying, the ocean's very terrifying, and
you can't take a typical like little fishing boat into the ocean.
Same if you live down south or somewhere, you can have like a car that you bought for $400 and it doesn't have a hood on it and it overheats and you have to keep pouring water into it, and it's like, you can't do that here. Like, everyone here, if you notice, and it is funny if you go other places, it's like how shitty the car hole like goes. In Minnesota, it's like if you don't want to buy a new car every year and then also not be able to really safely drive it for 6 months out of every one of those years, you have to aim a little bit higher. You have to drive around something that costs a couple $1,000s. Like, you just have to. You can't be like, you'll die. You'll not necessarily, but you'll end up in some situation where you're like, well, I can drive over here. It's just my friend lives in Eagan. And it's like, well, that's not the middle of nowhere. But somewhere between North Minneapolis and Eagan, when it's 50 below zero, your car stopped working. You're not really too near anything. Your phone battery died. And you're like, I'm going to actually die. Like, you have to have that oceanic respect for the winter here. And I'm mostly saying this for the people that do live here who sometimes don't have experience with the ocean. To me, the Minnesota or further north winter and the actual real-ass ocean are similar entities where it is a force of nature that's like, you can ski in it or go scuba diving. It's your friend. It's fun. And it can unequivocally kill you at a moment's notice if you're not being like, okay, seriously, don't just turn your back on this and have a little laugh. Like, you'll fucking die. Like, to wit, the one thing the ocean has on at least the Minnesota winter, we don't have polar bears here.
Yeah.
So there's not, if the winter gets real angry, all it can do is just get very, 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 very cold, which again is like a evil, villainous mutant superpower on its own. But the ocean can, drown you and crush you and do whatever it can. Poison. But it's also filled with monsters. And some of those monsters are adorable, like the killer whale, but they will live up to their name. And recently, they've been sinking yachts because, as someone who has been on the left for decades, one thing I can say about the people on my team is y'all don't know how to get anything done. So you can either vote, which you won't do, or maybe sink yachts, which you won't do. Now the killer whales can't vote, but you know what they will do? They'll sink some yachts. They'll actually go to the heart of the problem. They're not going to throw a brick through the window of a local Starbucks and pretend that they changed the world.
Girl power, because it was a female orca that started all this shit.
Naturally. And then she taught, the fun thing is...
And taught future generations. Why are we blurry?
I don't know.
Son of a bitch.
The exciting, the thing that I like about it, and you and I discovered this, or discussed this, I should say, yesterday. This usually helps. It's such a weird thing that we have to do.
This never happens anymore. What the fuck?
I don't know. I probably got it at a weird angle, and it's just happening. But it's the ocean.
Fuck you.
Oh, here, let's...
There we go.
Oh, it didn't make enough smoke. Except, it almost worked. Okay, son of a bitch. There we go. All right. Thank you, my work. All right, so. But orcas are reminding me currently in this thing they're doing of a thing that happened with elephants that I always loved. Elephants are very intelligent. Elephants are another thing with a soul.
Elephants make me cry. They're so amazing.
Yeah, and you can see in their eyes, and they'll pick up human things. Like you were talking about, they were like crossing a street, and then the car stopped, and the very last one poked back out and kind of did because he's seen like, whatever country he's seen.
Trunk
a family goes by, and the dad kind of is like, oh, yeah. It's like, thanks a lot. Or like the monkey in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's like, like they learn. And, apes, elephants, killer whales, everything, these big mammals, we don't always give enough credit. But my favorite thing, and the orca thing reminded me of this, is that there was a story there was this village, and it was in India. And also, by the way, like Eastern Indian elephants tend to be the ones that are like less chaotically destructive. Like African elephants are the ones that can be pretty fucking mean.
Really,
they're intelligent, they're all that, but they're almost more like humans, where they're like, do not fuck with these things.
Territorial, I'm gonna say. And
again, they're like the chimps of elephants. They're just like, okay, watch out for these guys. The ones in India they do have a slightly different constitution for the most part. It's a sweeping generalization, but they tend to coexist with humans a little bit better. And so it was more out of character, where I don't know when this was, maybe in the 40s or something, but there was this village in India that these elephants would just come and just fucking just raze it to the fucking ground. They just trample shit and knock buildings over and just attack people, and they kept doing it. And they're like, why is this happening? These guys don't normally do this. This is wild for them. And somebody figured out that there was a poacher from that village who, like 3 generations ago, so these were probably the age of the young, not a pup, what the calf, the young elephants. Yeah. They had gone and they had shot a baby elephant or something like that, and so they were exacting vengeance. Elephants have a sense of justice, and they were doing it generations later, which means. And I've always loved this, the thing that you always would hear from like Sesame Street or your parents or whatever, they're like, oh, the elephant never forgets. And it was like, oh, they turned it into a cute thing about remembering to brush your teeth. But really, it's the elephant never forgets. Like they had just like generational vengeance, like the elephants serve their vengeance cold. Like that's what that means. The elephant never forgets means they're coming for you. Mm-hmm. And I feel... that we may learn eventually that this orca thing, I don't know that they have some sort of weird sense of class stratification, and they're just doing us a solid. There is perhaps some billionaire on a yacht may have shot a baby orca for sport and didn't want to get like arrested by some sort of international tribunal, and they hid it, but the orca didn't forget. The orcas were like, you see those boats? And yeah, the mother orca was teaching its children, and they taught other pods. Like, they just spread the information that it's like, now, it's like, going forward, all orcas will always attack yachts. And the hilarious thing is, it's like, well, you can't just start killing them off, because they're like a protected species, and we'll be watching you. But it's also like, they might make it so you can't have yachts anymore.
They literally...
Like, don't go in the ocean. They're just going to kill you.
Jam their faces into the rudders of the boat.
I was hoping they smashed up through the bottom like in Tremors and just like grabbed people.
I know, when I first heard about it, that's exactly what I thought of too.
Well, maybe they'll see this podcast because they're very savvy.
Yes.
And they'll be like, oh, that would be super cool.
You know, like
let's do that.
You know how the Simpsons are usually right about the future? Yeah. I think they were just a little bit off. It's not the dolphins, it's going to be the whales.
The funny thing is it could be that the whales inspire the dolphins. You know what I mean? It could be like the orcas destroying yachts will be a footnote in history for the Great Sea Mammal War or whatever. It's like, it was when the dolphins were like, you know what? Yeah, this is bullshit. Because, you know, pound for pound, the dolphins are worse. They're like, the orcas have a sense of, perhaps it is justice. Perhaps they're like, hey, like, we know now who is responsible for polluting the ocean, and we're going to go after them. The dolphins are just rapists and murderers. They're the jokers of the sea. And, like, they're just going to be like, you know what we should really do? Just attack every human we see, from chimpanzee to chimpanzee. Like, we don't give a fuck anymore. Like, when Bender from Futurama became the leader of the penguins, and he was like, if it's not black and white, peck, scratch, and bite. That's
so good.
And that's, I think, hey, that works for the orca too, actually. Well, maybe not peck, but yeah, whatever. Bite, drown.
I wonder, like, if other species of whales will eventually catch on. I mean, I would hate to have, like, a fucking humpback whale just, like, do a fucking backflip onto my boat. Like,
oh, they could take you down like we'll see a return to the, like, you know, those old wood carvings of the giant squids taking down entire sailing ships, and we now know that at the very least, at one point or another, if not currently, there are things that are easily big enough to have done that. Whether or not they have, we don't really know, but at the same time, why would they not, I guess? Like, and there were a lot bigger, large predators that could take down humans in centuries past because we hadn't killed them all yet. And as we've gone over before, it's like, isn't it interesting that, like, we don't get hunted for food? It's like, yeah, we used to. Like everything else, and then we invented like sharp stuff and words, and then we kind of fixed most of them up. And for me, the best fingerprint proving that did happen is that in the places where humans don't go, like the polar ice caps and deep in the ocean and stuff, those things are still around. We just killed them where they were by us. If there was polar bears in fucking California, they'd be dead. They'd be gone. We'd be like, this can't happen because those things are terrifying. And there's like giant squids and orcas out in the middle of the ocean where, you know, we're not like living. We sail boats through there. We're not living there, you know, the way that, whatever. But yeah, there used to be birds of prey that could fly away with a toddler and stuff. And this is like, well, that kept happening. And then we invented like bows and arrows, and that was the end of that until there was no more left. That's what we did. We murdered our way to the top of the food chain, which is how you get there, by the way. Like, that's not natural. It's like everything that's ever been at the top of the food chain very much murdered its way there. And I'm sure we ate everything we killed because there wasn't that much to eat. So whatever, like we're more a part of this world than some people would like to admit. Someone made a good point a little while ago, and this is a weird aside, but it might have something to do with the orcas. It very well might. Intelligence is a weird thing. Someone was going like, if you know, look at like an insect colony, right? Particularly like maybe like bees or something like that. Something advanced. Because like ants kind of tunnel around, but bees like fly away for like miles and come back. You know, it's like, wow. But they don't live very long, and they're born just knowing how to do that. They are like, okay, well, this one's job is this, that one's job is that, and it's like, okay, we stay here, and then we fly. Which one's the queen? I'm the queen. No, you're not. The Simpsons are in space, but yeah, like they're subdivided into knowing exactly not only their job, which is weird. They're just born knowing that, but which one they have. They're like, oh, these guys protect the queens. These guys fly out there. These ones take care of the babies. Like, it's weird. And then if you think about it, the way humans are, it's just a more advanced version of that, particularly when you dig into, like, neurodivergence and stuff, where it's like, okay, well, like, these guys do the math, and they don't go fight the lions. And these guys fight the lions, and they don't do the math. And these guys think about all this weird stuff, but then they don't, it's like they create things we haven't thought about before, but they're very bad at keeping track of the things we've already created. That's Ryan. It's just like, it's like, oh, we're a few steps above bees, so therefore, and we fall into the things that we do, and we live longer, and it takes us longer to figure stuff out. But are we therefore really any different than just sort of a weird pre-programmed 7 billion cell multifaceted machine of some kind, the way that they tend to be? I don't know. And when you look at that in the context of things like elephants and orcas and stuff, where it's like balances have to be struck, where it's like, oh, this isn't random violence. This was like an impediment to the, they killed one of our babies. So this is basically, we're acting more like white blood cells with a tumor or something. It's like, oh, this can't be. We must go and just surround this thing and smash it into the ground so none of our little new cells get picked off by it anymore. And when you start looking at the entire world like that, you sort of could imagine when you're like, what does it say about intelligence or intent or anything like that when it comes to orcas and yachts? Or are they just doing what needs to be done without even really realizing it completely? It's like, they are smart, but it's like...
some people have it, like, they're jumping back and forth between the theory of, like, how crows remember...
Oh, yeah.
Like that, like, vengeance...
The crows will get you.
Revenge, or play. They sometimes think that they're playing with these boats. I'm like,
no,
well, why
not.
wouldn't they have been playing with them before? We've had boats in the ocean for a long time.
And we've had crows for long enough to know that if the orcas are even smarter than those. And, not colubrids, that's a snake. But what is the thing of the crows and ravens? Corvids?
Yeah.
Whatever. They can describe human faces to one another. They figured that out. Like, they're like, we prove that they definitely can do that. And not only can they, but they do that. Like, that's a thing with them. And those are birds. Bird brain is literally an insult for how stupid someone is. And it's like, yeah, but these things know your social security number. Like, okay, so it's like, what the hell are the orcas up to? Probably a lot more than that. Like, they could be, for all I know, they're not even, people are like, oh, they're taking vengeance because they're destroying the environment. It's like, no, the orcas, honestly, they took out insurance policies on these billionaires' yachts.
Yeah.
And they're just committing fraud. Like, they're so much more advanced than we understood ever before. Oh. Like, I like committing fraud, and I'm really smart, and these orcas are smarter than me. Because they can't get caught. It's like they're off the grid. What, are you going to put them in jail? They're like, we're on the protected species list, bitch. We're going to just fucking be like, oh, yeah, I bought a controlling stock in a company that salvages crashed yachts, and then we just started wrecking them. And then they're like, well, now you can't prove this is just, we're an animal, so it's an act of God, which we knew going into it. Yeah, up yours, fucker. Like, they're going to be so rich. The orcas are going to be the new billionaires. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
And I'm here for that. Like what? Some sort of ocean monster versus some fucking finance asshole? What difference does it make to me? Like, oh, who has all the money? Someone who would either, would just happily spit in my face and shake my hand or eat me? Like, what's the difference? I'm never gonna meet an orca or a billionaire.
Hey,
doesn't matter.
Yeah, you probably have a better chance of meeting an orca than a billionaire. Well, no.
Well,
I don't know.
Where I am,
whatever.
I actually might have met one or two, but the thing is that like,
oh,
no,
well.
without realizing it at the time. Dude, Flo Rida hugged me one time. I get into some weird situation.
I know. You
Like, I didn't instigate it. So, like, but, and I was at a thing for insanely rich people. There was probably billionaires at that thing, for sure. He was probably, besides me, the guy with the least amount of money in that whole entire building. Like, yeah. I mean, I got paid, but not very well. But the thing is that there's a funny also thing that if my theory about, Orca fraud, some sort of orchestrated financial takeover was true, what difference would it make? Like, when you realize you're that far down the chain, they could be like, oh yeah, like a bunch of those chimps they sent to space came back super intelligent. Now they run the stock market. And John Wheeler's life has not changed a bit, other than being aware of that. You realize that the class system is so fucking far spread out and that you're never... all the people that are like, we should keep these, we should never regulate anything because someday I might be a super intelligent chimp that comes back from space. And I'm not going to want to. And also.
That is totally about your chance of becoming a billionaire, by the way.
Yeah. And also, what kind of. I just thought of this. What kind of pussy are you? When you're like, okay, like, let's say this. You're like, oh, when I was poor. Let's say you're going to be a billionaire someday, but you're a 15-year-old Bitcoin collecting stinky buttface, and you're like, oh, well, we shouldn't have regulations because you're some kind of weird libertarian because it's like you're either 15 or 50 with the mind of a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
And like, you're like, oh, yeah, I won't vote for this because someday I might be a billionaire. But the thing is anything you're voting for as a person, as a poor person, is probably going to like make you more money. Like it's going to like, oh, well, I get free healthcare so I can like take more risks in following my dreams and my things where I kind of think I might get that far. And hey, good for you. But you don't think that once you become a billionaire, you can turn around and re-lobby Congress just to get rid of that same rule? You need to take a lesson from the fucking boomers. Use the shit, get to the place, and then fucking take the ladder off the helicopter and throw it into the ocean while everyone else is trying to climb up to it. You can do that. I had that thought. Literally, I'll try to be vague about this. But so it's like, okay, there's rules with this whole like weed dispensary thing. And I figured out that it's like, as I become integral to the whole thing, maybe it's not me, but maybe it's, people adjacent to me. And it's like, well, you can only have so many dispensaries, but what if there's sort of like a shell corporation owned by another party, but you're, kind of the money person behind all of it and the infrastructure. And you find a way to have 9 of them, 10 of them, 18 of them, whatever. You start being able to circumvent the rule a little bit through a bunch of crazy Frank Reynolds shit. And, get to be where it's like, oh yeah, like we kind of have this shadow monopoly, which is a cool word I thought of. And, whatever.
Great job.
But then it's like, well, once you have that shadow monopoly going and the amount of money coming in from doing that is a certain level, a little bird put the idea in my ear that's like, well, at that point you could maybe go and you could afford to do things like, lobby Congress, and then maybe we could go ahead and make a few changes to this rule that made us rich in the first place. And now the shadow monopoly isn't necessary any longer, and it all comes out in the open, and that 40% market share becomes 90, and it's just a horrible fucking thing that I'm all mixed up in, and whatever. And like, but see, none of that might happen. Well, it might, but the thing is that like, if you're a stinky little defender of Elon Musk and like whatever, just be confident, okay? You're poor right now. Vote for the things that help you. And then, when you become a billionaire, oh yeah, I'll forego the if. When is this going to happen? Well then, yeah, lobby to change those rules to fuck everyone else over except for you. That's the real American way. But don't vote for the billionaires when you're making $11 an hour. Don't do that. Believe in yourself. Believe that once you get there, you could, like Temple of Doom, and just, like, cut that bridge and just send everyone else to the gator pit. Whatever.
I like the
This is my way of tricking those idiots.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I was going to say that, but...
Because you're never going to be a billionaire. And, and then it'll just end up that kids get school lunches or whatever. And then, and then you'll die unloved, like, and
really fucking mad about it.
And angry and disfigured like Rickety Cricket. Yeah. And that'll be really funny. But no, I have to maintain the idea that all of their ideas are correct, and my thing is in line with that. It can't be like, well, you won't ever become a billionaire, so you should vote for the common good. No, people are too narcissistic for that line of logic to work on them. So I'd be like, oh, yeah, just Just be a two-faced piece of shit. And by the way, if you have a problem with doing that, you're definitely never going to make any money. like you better be ready to be the world's biggest hypocrite. Then you might have a chance. Lie about your dad's emerald mine. Fucking just whatever. Like, you have to do that to get anywhere. It also helps if your parents are basically apartheid slavery millionaires. And
the only way you're going to be rich is if it's generational wealth.
Yeah.
That is it.
But let's just say you get lucky. Yeah.
Oh, you get lucky?
Lobby Congress then.
Sure.
That's what you do. And that's fun. Isn't it? What's the point of amassing all that money and power if not to bend the world to your will or whatever? What are you gonna, you want it all set up for when you get there? You want to bunt your way to a home run? No, fuck that. Like, you want to get a home run because for some reason the ump wasn't looking when you smashed the second baseman's kneecaps in with the bat. Like, that's how you really make it. And plus, that's the fucking, that's the people that you want to hear the roar of the cannonballs and the fucking, why get rich if it's not also part of some sort of, like, tyrannical charge to the top, leaving just fiery wreckage in your wake? You want to just pleasantly, like, while listening to Kenny G at the dentist's office, become super wealthy? That's boring. Don't do that.
And it doesn't happen.
And it doesn't happen. But
you
cannot argue with these people about things that don't happen. He's like, but what if it did?
You cannot.
And it's like, well, I might lose my virginity. It's like, no one's ever going to touch your wiener. Like, but what if they might? And then they got to cling to that.
All right, we'll just go with yours because mine was just.
I like where you were maybe going. But don't be accurate. Don't argue with these assholes. You just really have to appeal to the
I don't argue with those assholes. I don't even associate with those assholes because I know it's a waste of my time.
It definitely is.
And I definitely don't care, and
yeah,
whatever.
You shouldn't care. I won't then. Well, good. Yeah,
right?
no, that's so I did have to. Like, I re-explained this last episode to Peter so heavily.
Thank God I don't want to have to.
No. Well, you've also been through all the new theories where we thought it was written by AI.
Yeah, well, we went back and we were like,
oh, it was from 2011.
Yeah.
Unless that's a lie. I don't know. Probably not. But, nevertheless, everybody knows what this is, dear asshole. And I read a new page every day, and I don't read ahead, so I don't know.
Every day? Yeah.
Well, every podcast. The days in between these don't count.
Right.
Because what are we doing? Just hanging out? It's nothing. You're nothing if you're not making content, baby. Yeah. So it's just this horrible book. And we did break a record, though. I read one and then had Peter read one. Because I just really wanted to drill it home, And I might do that.
You did 2 in 1?
We did 2 in 1. I read one. Went over the incredulity of, like, what in the hell is this? I'm like, here, why don't you read the next one? And he's just like, what? Like, even he was just like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, yeah, I know, it's something. But this one. Dear asshole who stole my pen. Now,
stole my lighter would be.
These people do not smoke cigarettes or drugs or anything. They're too boring.
Yes, I know.
And also not real. Oh yeah, we did float the theory that I actually wrote this book and like sent it back in time after the singularity or something. Like, 'cause it's the only way it ended up making any sense. But like,
I'm sure we'll have lots of theories.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying the dear asshole conspiracy theory segment that's growing like a tumor in this podcast.
It's great.
But
no one ever comments on Dear Asshole.
They really, because they don't watch all the way to this part. But no, like I said, all of these are still just like jammed up on this hard drive. Like, I will eventually go and spend the insane amount of time to just go, here's Dear Asshole, just only when I start. But like clip by clip, and it would be like 15 hours long in 10-minute chunks.
I cannot wait till that happens.
But that might get the attention of whoever wrote this, and then it might get like a weird bit of internet bump, so that people are like, "What are they talking about?" I don't know. But most of them are, if not racist, at the very least, like tone-deafly classist and classless. Yeah. But this one seems sort of innocuous, and it's Dear Asshole Who Stole My Pen. You've crossed the line, assumably written in pen. Pen theft is a serious crime. Do you have... See, this one actually does feel sarcastic. The other ones feel very unabashed. I don't know.
I know, but it's
because pen theft is not a serious crime. Well, I don't know. Do you have any idea what I had to go through to get that thing? Pens don't grow on trees, you know. This feels like it was written by somebody else. Sure, other pens may come along, but they won't have that smooth gliding rollerball or contoured comfort grip. Is this secretly about penises? Because the way the handwriting looks. Doesn't that look... Just look for a second. Penis?
Penis? Oh, big
penis?
time, yeah.
Okay.
My mind goes to penis.
They're thinking about penis here. Sure, other penis may come along. All right. Dear asshole who stole my penis. You have crossed the line. Penis theft is a serious crime. This is so much better now. Do you have any idea what I had to go through to get that thing? Penises don't grow on trees, you know. Sure, other penises may come along, but they won't have that smooth gliding rollerball or contoured comfort grip.
Woo!
Yeah, gone are the days of my colorful translucent plastic barrel basking in the fluorescent light.
Sometimes they're plastic.
Exactly. You stripped that joy from me, have you no soul? That was my penis, you hear me? Mine. And this just says F you, PSC you in hell. This is so unhinged. I like this one. Yeah. I did like it more when I changed pen to penis, but I think that was the idea. And then someone was like, don't put that. God. Hang on a second.
Penis.
Hang on.
Are you going to change them all? Oh, okay.
Penis theft is a serious crime. Anyway, yeah. This has been a weird episode because, there's a lot of things about it that were interesting and fun. I'm just going to give a 5th grade book report where I didn't read the book. We learned many things and many of the characters experienced a lot of stuff in the story. I overall give To Kill a Salesman a 4 out of 5 stars for teaching me about life on the prairie. But yeah, no. I like this page of Dear Asshole. I don't know. Wait, let's try to hit the drum set again.
Okay, you hit the drum set.
A wop, bop, a loo, bop, wop, bam, boom.
Yeah.
I didn't do very good. I hit the cymbals on the other. It actually did the blang.
Yeah.
You could hear it on the podcast. But you know what? As Primus said of their greatest hits CD that they put out, that looked like a packet of American cheese, and I really like that about it. Mm-hmm. They can't all be zingers.
The Reverend John Wheeler podcast takes zero responsibility for the words, actions, or ideas of its host, guests, or listeners. Though the people on the screen may at times be speaking directly to you and may occasionally give you direct calls to action, neither Reverend John nor the Alchemical Cocktail Lounge are under any moral or legal obligation to answer for the potentially disastrous repercussions that may arise if you are stupid enough to actually follow the orders of a raving lunatic. Think for yourself and do whatever you want, because you're on your own. If anyone ever tries to sue this podcast, black SUVs will converge on your location in the darkness of night and you will never be seen again. Remember to like and subscribe.